Part 42. At the beginning, I gave the future empress her death. I became stronger because I was stupid. Author, Len Mian Buletin Leng. Chapter 411. Although this voice was calm and even a little gentle, it conveyed an inexplicable sense of oppression. His Majesty. Upon hearing this familiar voice, the generals were immediately overjoyed and their bodies trembled with excitement. They looked up and saw a man wearing a black dragon robe walking out slowly. He was wearing a black dragon robe, a jade belt hanging from his waist, golden boots on his feet, and a crown on his head, standing on the top of the hall. His face is handsome, with sharp edges and corners, and his brows are deep and dark, like deep stars. He has a domineering aura that dominates the world, making people unable to help but kneel down and surrender. There is infinite majesty in his movements. It was Qin Mu. Behind him, there were several stunning women. I saw that each of them had stunning looks, fair and smooth skin, and was extremely beautiful. Each of them had a hint of coldness and arrogance, but they were still charming and charming. The most eye-catching one is undoubtedly one of the girls in a plain skirt. Her appearance is pure and delicate, her eyes are as clear as autumn water, her nose is high and straight, her small cherry mouth is slightly pursed, revealing a hint of coldness and alienation, but it gives people an extremely stunning feeling. On that palm-sized melon face, the facial features were so delicate that they seemed to have been carved out, perfect, and exuding an indescribable aura of holiness. At this time, she stood next to Qin Mu, like a blooming snow lotus. It was Zhang Luoshan, the Lord of the North. She is still so cold, like a fairy who does not eat fireworks, maintaining an indifferent attitude towards everything. Only when facing Qin Mu alone would she show the shyness of a little daughter. "Meet your Majesty. See my Emperor." In an instant, all the generals knelt down on one knee and shouted loudly. "See your Majesty. Welcome your Majesty. Welcome your Majesty." Suddenly, hundreds of thousands of soldiers shouted at the same time, and the sound swept through the sky. Their eyes were all shining with reverence. This is their emperor, who rules hundreds of millions of people, saves the Qin dynasty from dangers several times, and leads the Qin dynasty to achieve unprecedented glory. He is the truly supreme being of the Qin dynasty. See your Majesty. The ordinary people in the distance were also kneeling on the ground. At this moment, the sound that had almost reached its peak rose again, deafening. The sound gathered into a huge torrent, soaring straight into the sky, and the loud sound echoed in the air for a long time. Waves of cheers were like a tsunami, sweeping across the entire city of Chang'an. The endless cheers resounded for 9 days, with a majestic momentum. The streets were empty and crowded, and dense crowds crowded the streets. At this moment, the entire Chang'an city was completely boiling. "Welcome our emperor back." At the same time, a loud voice came from the chariot in the distance, and an old man came out. His temples are white, but he is energetic and his eyes are extremely sharp. National Preceptor Du Yulin. After he received the news that someone had forced his way into Chang'an city and injured the commander of the Imperial Guard, he rushed over in a chariot. But he didn't expect that there was no room for him to perform at all. First, the Supreme Emperor Qin Tian appeared, and now His Majesty appeared. A big stone finally fell in Du Yulin's heart. He believed that with His Majesty here, there would be no surprises in Qin. And this kind of confidence, not even the Supreme Emperor Qin Tian can give him, only His Majesty can do it. "See your Majesty. Your Majesty is welcome back to the palace." As Du Yulin finished speaking, more and more people flocked to the square from all around. There are numerous figures and huge crowds of people. Countless voices merged into a huge sound dragon in the air, deafening and resounding throughout the sky. With such a bustling, majestic scene, even a general like Du Yulin who has experienced countless hardships cannot suppress the excitement in his heart, let alone other people. Even Qin Tian, the supreme emperor of the Qin dynasty, was a little stunned and felt sour in his heart. When he showed up just now, there was no such big pomp. But Qin Tian can also understand. After all, this was Qin Mu's first public appearance after seclusion. The last time he appeared was when he was suppressing the saints of the Apocalypse domain. He has not been seen since. That's why these people of Great Qin are so enthusiastic and excited. Of course, although Qin Tian felt sour in his heart, he was more pleased. It was too late for him to be happy that De Qin could have such cohesion. However, this sudden scene stunned Yan Zi and others. They looked at Qin Mu and then at the surrounding soldiers, with doubts on their faces. Is this the great Qin Emperor Qin Mu? Judging from the bone age, he does look very young, but his strength does not seem to be as strong as they imagined. The other party's posture is indeed very majestic, but that is relative to ordinary people. But when their cultivation reaches their level, the majesty of the emperor is simply dispensable to them and something they can completely ignore. Master Yan Zi took a serious look at it. In his eyes, the aura and spiritual energy fluctuations emanating from Qin Mu were just like that of an ordinary monk. There was nothing extraordinary about him at all. How could he be the all-powerful emperor of Qin with such a temperament and aura? Master Yan Zi frowned and fell into deep thought. He always felt that things were not that simple. This young emperor of the Great Qin should be more powerful than he thought. Otherwise, how could so many generals and people respect him so much, and even just showing up for a while caused such a sensation, as if they had seen their own gods? Not only that, he also unified the Tianlan domain and conquered the Tiankai domain. All these signs show that Qin Mu is definitely not as harmless and ordinary as he seems on the surface. Could it be that, the other party has been able to restrain his momentum to such an extent, reaching the state of returning to nature, so that I can't see any abnormality? Master Yan Zi narrowed his eyes, thinking. He stared at Qin Mu, hoping to find a flaw in him. Unfortunately, there was no flaw. He didn't see anything. Qin Mu just stood there quietly, like an ordinary person. However, the deeply hidden terrifying aura still made him feel terrified. And this feeling, even as a quasi-emperor, Qin Tian, who had just beaten him seriously, had never brought him. Could it be? Zhen Yan suddenly thought of a more terrifying possibility. Could the other party have surpassed the realm of quasi-emperor and become stronger than Qin Tian? This was an intuition, an extraordinary perception that made him shudder. Zhen Yan's did not dare to think further, for he was afraid that he would go crazy if he continued to speculate. How could a boy with such a young bone age have such a strong strength? This must be fake. Yes, that's right, it must be fake, the other party must be deliberately making a mystery. Zhen Yan's thoughts were in a mess, and he kept making inferences and overturning himself, but he still did not dare to make a rash judgment. Because all this was too weird. He could only use this excuse to deceive himself. Qin Tian stood in the void, looking down at the boundless scenery below, and was quite satisfied. At this time, the people of Dakin were all around. These people included ministers, officials, merchants, and all kinds of people. But without exception, they all looked at him fanatically, as if they had seen the only true God. Qin Mu's eyes swept through the crowd and fell on Master Yan Zi, who was still thinking about it. But he only glanced at him, and then looked at the seriously injured commander of the Imperial Guards, and then tapped his fingers. The next moment, the commander's originally sluggish momentum was instantly restored, and all his injuries were restored to their original state. "Thank you, Your Majesty, for saving my life." The commander of the Imperial Guards was grateful, and he quickly turned over and knelt, looking at Qin Mu with a hot and enthusiastic look. His Majesty is indeed His Majesty, and he healed all his injuries with a flick of his finger. Qin Mu did not speak. It was not until a moment later that he opened his thin lips and said, "Stand up." His voice was low and mellow, revealing a trustworthy power. "Thank you, Your Majesty," the commander of the Imperial Guards kowtowed again, and then slowly stood up. Qin Mu nodded slightly, then looked around, and his eyes finally fell on Master Yan Ziyi, who was controlled by Qin Tian, and a faint smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. "Who are you?" "At the beginning, I gave the future empress her death. I became stronger because I was stupid." Author, Len Mian Buletin Leng. Chapter 412. Looking at Qin Mu's handsome and delicate face, Master Yan Ziyi's hair stood on end, chills rose up his back, and he couldn't help but shiver. He felt a strong murderous intent and danger. "Are you the master of the Qin Empire?" Master Yan Ziyi had completely forgotten that he was still being held down by Qin Tian. He stared at Qin Mu and asked with burning eyes. "I am the Emperor of Great Qin," Qin Mu said. His tone was indifferent and his expression was calm. At this moment, it seemed that he was the only one under the sky, and there was no other existence. The whole world became silent and eclipsed. Master Yan Ziyi was horrified. He clearly saw the murderous intent in Qin Mu's eyes, but he couldn't feel it. This strange feeling made his scalp numb and his whole body chilly. He had a premonition that if he resisted at this moment, he would definitely die without any chance of survival. At this moment, he suddenly understood why the soldiers were so respectful and convinced of the young emperor of Qin. This young emperor of the Qin dynasty is indeed not a mediocre person, his aura is too intimidating. He took a few deep breaths, trying to suppress the throbbing in his heart, and slowly exhaled, trying to stay calm. Then he said, "I am the master of Qingtian Temple, my name is Yan Ziyi. I came to Tianlan territory today to inform you about the centenary celebration." Master Yan Ziyi decisively changed his rhetoric and did not say anything about asking for guilt. He doesn't want to die. As for the demise of those sects in Tiankai domain, what does it have to do with him? Qin Mu looked at Master Yan Ziyi, his eyes cold and indifferent, and a sarcastic look appeared on the corner of his mouth. "I heard that nearly 100 sects in the Apocalypse region were attacked and destroyed. Blood flowed everywhere. Corpses were scattered all over the fields. They were piled up like mountains. It was extremely tragic. Could it be you who did it?" Qin Mu spoke in a serious tone. "Master Yan's. What a rebel against Tiangang. He actually confused right and wrong and put this big hat on their Qingyun temple's head. How shameless." Qin Mu looked at Master Yan Ziyi with an indifferent look, half smiling but not smiling. The muscles on Yan Ziyi's face twitched twice. He clenched his fists tightly, wanting to rush forward and tear Qin Mu into pieces. But in the end reason prevailed over anger. "Your Majesty, we, Qingtian Temple, have nothing to do with the Tiankai domain sect, let alone any hatred at all. We have no motive at all, and no malice." Master Yan Ziyi's face was ashen, and he defended through gritted teeth. He was extremely angry, but he couldn't do anything to Qin Mu. He couldn't do anything to him. Qin Mu glanced at Master Yan Ziyi with a cold look. "Fart. If you really don't have any ill intentions, why did you send your disciples to invade my territory?" Master Yan Ziyi was immediately speechless. He couldn't tell the other party that he was greedy after seeing the immortal palace in Daqin, so he wanted to use the destruction of the Apocalypse domain sect to test him. "Second, let's see if we can get any benefits." "What are you doing? Is what I said wrong?" Qin Mu snorted coldly. He glanced at Yan Ziyi, his eyes flashing with murderous intent. "You are clearly coveting the treasures of the sects in the Apocalypse region. In order to satisfy your own desires, you have harmed many sects in the Apocalypse region. Now you want to harm our great Qin dynasty. It is simply heinous. You and Qingtian Temple, one of the 4 holy places in the Daoxuan domain, did such a dirty thing. It really opened my eyes. Do you, Qingtian Temple, still deserve to be called a holy place? Do you really think that no one in this world can check and balance you? Qin Mu was like holding the constitution of heaven in his mouth, every word of it was like a pearl, even arousing the resonance of the great avenue, and his majesty was infinite. Master Yan Zi's face trembled, and his face turned completely livid. This is a naked humiliation, a humiliation to the entire Qingtian temple. Their Qingtian temple has been standing in the cultivation world for tens of thousands of years and has never encountered such a situation. He felt extremely aggrieved, but facing the aggressive Qin Mu, he did not dare to refute, or even say a harsh word. Because, at this moment, his life was in Qin Tian's hands. Master Yan's was about to speak. At this moment, Qin Tian on the side suddenly raised his foot and kicked him. Master Yan Zi was caught off guard and fell to his knees on the ground. "Kneel down and say it," Qin Tian said calmly. Master Yan Zi's face turned red, and his heart was filled with anger. "What? You don't want to kneel?" Qin Tian's mouth curved. "You." Master Yan Zi's eyes were blazing with fire. He could no longer suppress the anger in his heart and said in a hateful voice, "I represent Qingtian Temple. Do you know the consequences of insulting Qingtian Temple?" "Oh," Qin Tian raised his eyebrows, looked at Master Yan Zi with interest, and said, "Then tell me, what will be the consequences?" Master Yan Zi sneered, "Those who insult the Holy Land will be thrown into the demon suppression tower and will never be able to stand up again." Qin Tian sneered, glanced at Master Yan Zi with disdain, and said mockingly, "Only your Qingtian temple? You are not qualified enough. You." Master Yan Zi's face turned livid and he glared at Qin Tian, "Don't bully others too much. I, Great Qin, have never done anything to bully the weak. You should be the ones who bully others too much." Qin Tian's tone was cold and distant. Master Yan's was so choked that he almost couldn't breathe. If this continues, the mastermind behind the destruction of the sects in the apocalypse domain will really become their Qingtian temple. What a reversal of right and wrong. Unexpectedly, De Qin's shamelessness is still the same. Not only does His Majesty shamelessly frame the situation, but even the Supreme Emperor is telling lies. Master Yan Zi suppressed the overwhelming anger in his chest and forced out a smile. "The destruction of the Apocalypse Domain sect has indeed nothing to do with our Qingtian temple. Your Majesty, we have something to discuss." After speaking, he looked at Qin Mu. "It's easy to discuss." Qin Mu shook his head and said, "I have nothing to talk to you about. Today I left the seclusion, firstly to attend the centenary celebration, and secondly to do justice for heaven and punish you, the human race, who destroyed the sect of Tiankai domain. Disaster." Master Yan Zi really couldn't bear it anymore. It seemed that Qin Mu was determined to take the blame on him. "What evidence do you have?" Master Yan said coldly. The fear in his heart disappeared, replaced by a strong murderous intention. If Qin Mu insists on framing him today, even if he tries to expose all his trump cards, he must be killed on the spot today. "Evidence," Qin Mu chuckled, then slowly took out a photographic stone and said calmly, "This is the evidence." When Master Yan Zi saw this, his heart suddenly thumped. Qin Mu slowly opened the photo stone, and the scene above was clearly the scene of Li Yuan injuring the commander of the imperial guards of the Qin dynasty. "The majestic Qingtian temple, but you injured my great Qin commander for no reason. Your attitude is extremely arrogant. You obviously have other agendas. This must be how you destroyed other sects in the apocalypse domain. Is this the style of Qingtian temple? He is simply the leader of the righteous path of the human race, and he is the scum of the human race. Fortunately, I have a kind heart and give these displaced fairies a place to shelter from the wind and rain, so that they can avoid wandering," Qin Mu said seriously and righteously. "Master Yan's. Qin Tian. Du Yulin. The generals of Great Qin." Qin Mu completely ignored everyone's looks. He continued with a solemn expression, I must show this picture at the centenary celebration meeting so that the world can see the true face of Qingtian Temple. Master Yanzi's pupils shrank suddenly, and his face instantly turned pale. He never expected that Qin Mu would retain this hand. If the great Qin dynasty released this recording stone, then he would really jump into the Yellow River and not be able to wash it away. When the time comes, their Qingtian temple will be in disrepute. Master Yanzi was trembling all over and his eyes were bloodshot. Now that the shadow stone is in Qin Mu's hands, even if he denies it, it will be useless unless he destroys the shadow stone now and gives Qin Mu no chance to grasp it. But can he really do it? Never mind. Even if you can't do it, you must do it. You are looking for death. Master Yanzi could no longer suppress the anger in his heart. He shouted violently and prepared to use his secret technique to attack Qin Mu. Boom! Thunder exploded all over Master Yanzi, and extremely violent power raged crazily, as if the sky was shattering and the earth was shattering. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. At the beginning, I gave the future empress her death. I became stronger because I was stupid. Author, Len Mian Buletin Leng. Chapter 413. Before coming to Deccan, Master Yanzi had never thought that there would be a force in the 9 realms of the human race that dared to throw dirty water on Qingtian Temple. Moreover, there was truth and falsehood in this dirty water. If it was based on Qin Mu's one-sided words, it would really cause a certain loss of reputation to Qingtian Temple. So he had to take action. In an instant, Master Yanzi turned into a purple light, carrying a rolling thunder and rushing towards Qin Mu, vowing to kill him here. There was no way to settle this matter peacefully, and he could only kill Qin Mu with all his strength. Otherwise, once the other party appeared in the centennial celebration, and then allowed the other party to add fuel to the fire and talk nonsense, the reputation accumulated by Qingtian Temple for tens of thousands of years would be destroyed in his hands. Although no one should dare to accuse Qingtian Temple on the surface, it is not certain what will happen behind the scenes. More importantly, if the other 3 holy places also take this matter seriously, then Qingtian Temple will have a hard time. After all, their Qingtian Temple does have a huge secret, a secret that cannot be known by any other forces. When he thought that the secret might be leaked because of him, Master Yanzi trembled in his heart. If this is true, he will be punished most severely. At that time, death, for him, is the luckiest thing. This time Master Yanzi did not hold back at all, and directly burst out with all his strength, ready to defeat Qin Mu in one fell swoop. I saw Master Yanzi's figure turned into a stream of light, breaking through the sound barrier in an instant, and rushing towards Qin Mu. Shua! Master Yanzi's right palm slapped in the air, and the palm print flew up, condensing a dazzling thunder force, like the rising sun, with terrifying power. Die for me! Master Yanzi roared, staring at Qin Mu fiercely. At this moment, he almost used up all his life skills, just to kill Qin Mu under his palm. Hu! The palm print cut through the sky, tearing the void, and arrived in the blink of an eye. The terrifying energy shook the void and made it hum and tremble violently, as if it would collapse at any time. However, Qin Mu still stood there calmly, his face was calm, and he seemed not to be affected at all. The palm print whistled and hit Qin Mu in an instant. Bang! The palm print hit Qin Mu's body firmly, but it was like a drop in the ocean, without causing any ripples. Master Yanzi was shocked when he saw this. Although he had long guessed that Qin Mu's strength was unfathomable, he did not expect that his attack could not even hurt the other party. Could it be that he had been practicing for so many years, but he had lived in a dog's stomach? Thinking of this, Master Yanzi's eyes flashed with a touch of cruelty, and he immediately mobilized his whole body's spiritual power, and an even more terrifying force condensed on his arm. Huh, he growled and waved his palm fiercely again. However, this palm fell on Qin Mu's body, still did not stir up the slightest ripple, like rain hitting banana leaves, it could not shake him at all. Qin Mu still stood still in the same place, motionless. Now Master Yan Ziyi was completely panicked. How is it possible? Have you really entered the Emperor realm? He widened his eyes, his pupils suddenly shrank, his face full of fear and horror. With his power just now, absolutely no saint cultivator could resist it. Only cultivators who have entered the Emperor realm can do this. According to rumors, after a cultivator enters the Emperor realm, his physical body can reach the realm of eternal immortality. Even powerful weapons, even immortal weapons and sharp blades, are difficult to cut. Even if he is beaten into a bloody mist and his soul is destroyed, he can still be resurrected. Even, he can change his fate against the will of heaven and reshape his golden body. The horror of the Emperor realm strongmen can be seen. In addition, the Emperor-level strongmen can mobilize the power of heaven and earth, possess all kinds of incredible power, and suppress all enemies in the heavens and the worlds. Below the Emperor level, everyone is an ant. This statement is not an exaggeration. So, this young boy in front of him really broke through to the Emperor level. Or, the other party has practiced extremely advanced body refining techniques, causing his body to become extremely powerful. Or maybe he has some special holy body. Thinking of this, Master Yan Ziyi felt that his thoughts were becoming more and more confused. No matter which one it is, if he doesn't kill this young man in front of him today, there will be endless troubles. Thinking of this, Master Yan Ziyi's eyes narrowed suddenly. Immediately, the elements of heaven and earth around him suddenly boiled, gathered on his head, and condensed into a huge thunder sword, emitting blazing electric light, as if splitting the sky. Ha 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 ha, Junior. I admit that you are very powerful, beyond my expectation, and you actually blocked 2 killing moves of my full strength. However, do you think that my little trick is the true strength of my Qingtian temple? Let me tell you. It is far from enough. No matter what, you must die today. The next second, Master Yan Ziyi roared angrily, and suddenly urged the spiritual power in his body to infuse his whole body. Immediately, he turned into a swimming dragon and soared into the sky, carrying the violent power of thunder, and blasted towards Qin Mu again. Little bastard, you die. Accompanied by his roar, the thunder sword burst into dazzling brilliance, exuding a vast and terrifying aura, as if it could annihilate everything and crush everything. Qin Mu looked up at Master Yan Ziyi, and a slight arc appeared at the corner of his mouth, indifferent and cold. The reason why he did not launch a counter-attack was that he wanted to use this guy's hand to test the results of his retreat during this period. The result showed that it was perfect. This Master Yan Ziyi was almost the strongest saint under the Emperor realm, but he couldn't even break his defense. This shows how strong he is now. Boom. Master Yan Ziyi danced the thunder sword frantically, and thunders with terrifying power continued to pour towards Qin Mu, making a deafening roar, like thunder descending to the world, and the scene was horrifying. But Qin Mu always stood in place, without moving a step, and only relied on his body to withstand Master Yan Ziyi's attack. Your strength is not good enough. Qin Mu sighed softly, slowly raised his right foot, and took a step forward. The next moment, Qin Mu slowly stretched out his left hand, pinched his index finger and thumb together, and flicked it lightly at the lightning sword condensed by thunder. Instantly, the world was silent. Then, there was a muffled sound of bang. The lightning sword exploded, dissipated into smoke, turned into sparks all over the sky, and disappeared into the void. Puff. Master Yan Ziyi froze, his face turned pale in an instant, and he spit out a large mouthful of blood. A sickly flush appeared on his face, his breath was weak, and his body swayed and almost fell to the ground. The huge backlash force made him stagger back a few steps, and he stabilized his body with difficulty. He looked at Qin Mu with a look of deep horror. You. He opened his mouth and wanted to say something, but he couldn't say anything. His heart was full of horror and disbelief. This boy, who was thousands of years younger than himself, really stepped into the emperor realm. At the beginning, I gave the future empress her death. I became stronger because I was stupid. Author, Len Mian Buletin Leng. Chapter 414. Qin Mu walked towards Master Yanzi step by step. He was tall and straight, with black clothes fluttering in the wind. His handsome face was calm and gentle, and there was no fierce momentum on him. But Master Yanzi seemed to fall into an ice cellar, and the chill penetrated his heart. From his perspective, Qin Mu's figure seemed to be magnified countless times at once, like an ancient demon god, awe-inspiring and terrifying, overlooking the common people. The majesty of looking down on all living beings from a high place made him dare not look up, and even made him feel deeply powerless. You, what do you want to do? Master Yanzi swallowed hard, and asked with a trembling voice, his tone filled with strong fear. What do you say? Qin Mu smiled gently. Don't come over, Master Yanzi shouted in fear, with a trace of panic in his eyes. Qin Mu ignored him and continued to approach him. Master Yanzi retreated step by step, gritting his teeth and saying, You can't kill me. If you dare to kill me, Qingtian Temple will not forgive you. Don't come over, otherwise. He stared at Qin Mu with a guilty conscience, his head buzzing, and he couldn't speak clearly. Qin Mu shook his head with a smile. He stopped 3 feet away from Master Yanzi, looked down at him, and asked, Are all the masters in your sect so useless? Hearing this, Master Yanzi was immediately furious. He gritted his teeth and said, Young man, do you really think that you can sweep across the 4 wildernesses and 8 regions by relying on your strong physical body? If you really think so, then I can only say that you are too naive. There are many geniuses in this world that you can't imagine, and any one of them can crush you. As he spoke, he gathered his strength again, just waiting for the opportunity to give Qin Mu a fatal blow. Qin Mu smiled, Oh? Really? Zhen Yanzi snorted and said proudly, Yes, don't think that you can be invincible just because you have a strong body. Our Qingtian Temple is an ancient sect, and our saint son is a rare monster in 1,000 years. If he is born, he will definitely kill you. Qin Mu raised his eyebrows and said with a joking smile, Oh, really? From what you said, your saint son seems to be very powerful. Zhen Yanzi smiled proudly and said proudly, Of course. The strength of my saint son is unfathomable, and he can definitely be here, become the first in a centennial ceremony and get the title of Daozai of Xuanhuan. Qin Mu nodded, and then asked casually, I am not interested in the son of the saint. Do you have a saint fairy in Qingtian Temple? Zhen Yanzi was stunned and said in astonishment, Saint fairy. Qin Mu nodded, Yes, age doesn't matter, as long as you are good-looking, strong, and talented. After a pause, he added, It's okay to have a Taoist partner. Zhen Yan's face twitched. What on earth is this bastard planning? I advise you to give up this idea. The Supreme Master of our Qingtian Temple has only accepted 1 apprentice in all generations, and there is a rule that the direct disciple must be a male disciple. Zhen Yanzi roared angrily. Oh, really? That's a pity. Qin Mu pouted in disappointment and shook his head regretfully. Zhen Yan's forehead burst into several black lines. What are you regretting? It seems that the rumors from the outside world are indeed true. You are a shameless, lustful, and tyrant. Master Yanzi cursed in his heart. If that's the case, you can go on your way. Qin Mu suddenly raised his left hand, opened his 5 fingers, and slapped forward gently. There was no power fluctuation, no breath emanating, just like a fight between mortals, an ordinary slap. However, Master Yan Zi's eyes widened, and a look of extreme fear appeared on his face. This is the power of the Emperor. No. No, this is not the power of the Emperor, but it is better than the power of the Emperor. He couldn't speak, couldn't move, and couldn't even blink. He could only watch Qin Mu's slap slowly fall. At this moment, Master Yan Zi was really scared. He wanted to beg for mercy, wanted to live, wanted to kneel down and kowtow to admit his mistakes, and wanted to repent with tears. But it was all too late. Crack! The crisp sound of broken bones came from his ears, and the severe pain spread throughout his body. The expression of Master Yan Zi suddenly froze, and the whole person was like being struck by lightning, and he was dazed in place. Then a terrifying force surged into his body, tearing the meridians and blood vessels, and ravaging his dantian. In an instant, Master Yan Zi's meridians were completely destroyed and turned into powder, and his sea of qi was also shattered and reduced to ruins, and there was no way to recover. His body turned into a pool of mud, and he collapsed to the ground softly. His eyes were filled with resentment and fear, his lips moved, as if he wanted to say something, and a hoarse sound came out of his throat. The next moment, bang! Everything in Master Yan Zi's body was destroyed, including his soul, which was completely turned into nutrients for the enlightenment tree. The dignified Master King Tianguan, the top existence under the Emperor realm, fell just like that. Qin Mu retracted his right hand and stared at Master Yan Zi indifferently. His eyes were as deep as the stars in the night sky, bottomless, without any ripples. Master Li Yuan, who was standing by, was furious when he saw this. He never expected that the master, who was just exchanging glances with him, would be killed in the blink of an eye. Li Yuan was trembling all over. He knew that he was doomed today. With a thump, Li Yuan's knees weakened and he fell to the ground, begging tremblingly. "Your Majesty, spare your life, Your Majesty, spare your life, you are a noble person with a noble body. You must not dirty the dragon's claws because of a villain like me. Just treat the common people like a fart." His voice was full of tears, and he was pleading. He had worked hard to cultivate to his current level, and finally had the power that countless ordinary monks looked up to. How could he be willing to die like this? As long as you don't die, it's worth paying no matter how high the price is. "Let you go," Qin Mu glanced at him lightly and said with a half-smile, "That's not impossible." "Really?" Li Yuan suddenly raised his head, his eyes gleaming with surprise, and said excitedly, "Is your Majesty really willing to let me go?" He thought Qin Mu would kill him directly, but Qin Mu said he was willing to let him go, which made Li Yuan couldn't help but wonder if Qin Mu was crazy and would let the tiger go back to the mountain. However, these thoughts only flickered for 2 seconds before he lowered his head without hesitation and continued to beg for mercy. "Thank you for your kindness, Your Majesty. The common people will be heartbroken and repay Your Majesty's kindness of not killing." "Ha ha, I can indeed let you go." Qin Mu's tone was leisurely, as if he was saying something insignificant. "Your Majesty is kind, and the common people are grateful." Li Yuan's face was full of joy. "But it's a pity that I am willing to let you go, but my ancestor is not willing," Qin Mu said slowly. "Huh?" Li Yuan was startled, his expression froze on his face, and he swallowed hard. "My ancestors were very vengeful." Qin Mu's voice suddenly sounded distant and close, ethereal and strange. "His old man said that whoever bullies his grandson will destroy his entire clan." Boom! A majestic and terrifying murderous intention swept through the entire hall, and Li Yuan shivered under the pressure. Without saying a word, Qin Tian teleported to Li Yuan, held his neck with one hand, and lifted him above his head. He looked down at Li Yuan and said coldly, "You bitch, just die." After saying that, he made a fist with his right hand and smashed it down hard. Li Yuan's pupils shrank sharply, and his liver and gallbladder were split with fear. At this critical moment, an idea flashed in his mind, and as if he had grasped the last straw, he immediately shouted at the fastest speed in his life. "Wait! Your Majesty! I have an aunt who is a fairy. At the beginning, I gave the future empress her death. I became stronger because I was stupid." Author, Len Mian Bulletin Leng. Chapter 415. As soon as these words came out, the huge iron fist that was about to fall suddenly stopped. Qin Tian obviously knew Qin Mu's thoughts very well, so when he heard what the other party said, he didn't kill him again. Anyway, to him, Li Yuan is just an ant that can be crushed to death at any time. If he can really provide some value, then it is not impossible to keep him alive. Seeing that Qin Tian finally stopped attacking, Li Yuan breathed a sigh of relief. He was covered in cold sweat and his clothes were already soaked. It was too dangerous, and he was almost gone from this beautiful world forever. Qin Mu raised his eyebrows and said with a half smile, "Really? Don't lie to me. Your Majesty. The common people really didn't lie to you. My aunt is really a fairy," Li Yuan shouted. Qin Mu raised his eyebrows and said, "Who is your aunt?" Li Yuan took the opportunity to break free from Qin Tian's shackles, crawled desperately to Qin Mu's feet, knelt on the ground, and cried loudly. "Your Majesty, my aunt is really a fairy. She is the head of Jade Girl Palace. Jade Girl Palace is one of the 4 sects under Qingtian Temple. It was through her connections that I was able to join Qingtian Temple." He wiped the cold sweat from his forehead, and his heart was beating fast. Fortunately, he was smart and used the name of aunt in time. "Oh? What does your aunt look like?" Qin Mu asked. "My aunt's name is Yun Susu. She has a natural and peerless appearance. She is a famous fairy in Deoxuan domain," Li Yuan quickly complimented. "Kaiman has seen my aunt from afar several times, and her face is still unforgettable to this day. She is like Chang'e in the Moon Palace, with unrivaled splendor and beauty that captivates the country." Hearing this, Qin Mu rolled his eyelids and said, "You are good at bragging. The common people dare not lie. Everything the common people say is from the bottom of their hearts." Li Yuan was frightened and quickly defended, "Your Majesty, everything the common people say is true. Please believe in the common people." There was anxiety and fear in his voice. He knew that this was the only way to survive now, and he couldn't give up. Qin Mu stared at him for a long time, then suddenly showed a strange smile and slowly said 3 words, "Jade Girl Palace." Li Yuan was overjoyed when he heard this, thinking that he had finally dispelled Qin Mu's suspicion of him, and said quickly, Yes, it is the Jade Girl Palace. Although the people have not met my aunt a few times, my aunt has left a very deep impression on the people. She is as gorgeous as the fairy beside your Majesty." Li Yuan raised his sleeves and wiped the snot and tears from his face, and then said, "Your Majesty, Cao Men really did not deceive you, Cao Men is willing to swear." Qin Mu chuckled, "Okay, in that case, I believe you for now, but how can I find your aunt?" "Your Majesty, this is simple. Your Majesty only needs to follow me to the Deoxuan realm. When you arrive at the Jade Girl Palace, you can meet Cao Men's aunt," Li Yuan said flatteringly. "In that case, I will spare your life first," Qin Mu said lightly with a slight curve in the corner of his mouth. "Thank you, Your Majesty, for sparing the lives of ordinary people." Li Yuan kowtowed with joy, feeling as if he had returned to the human world again after the disaster. He actually didn't say the last part of the sentence. As long as he reaches Deoxuan domain, he will reach his territory. When the time comes, haha. Qin Mu was not looking at him, and turned to look at the other elders and deacons of Qingyun Temple. Their injuries were more serious, and many of them were even dying and their lives were in danger. "Do you have any last words?" Qin Mu looked down at them and asked casually. As soon as these words came out, these people were immediately frightened to the point of splitting their livers and gallbladders. They were filled with fear, but they were unwilling to die like this. They immediately kowtowed to Qin Mu. "Your Majesty, please forgive me. I shouldn't have offended your Majesty. Please, your Majesty, spare my life. We will definitely change our ways in the future." All the elders and deacons fell to their knees and begged for mercy. How can they care about their appearance? Saving their own lives is better than anything else. Now they only hate why they don't have a fairy like Aunt like Li Yuan. If they also knew some fairy, they wouldn't be in such a mess now. Seeing the pleading of these elders and deacons, Qin Mu's expression did not change at all. His eyes were cold to the bone, like a 10,000-year cold pool, without any fluctuation. This situation made these elders and deacons even more panicked, with their hearts in their throats. They felt the suffocation and fear they had never experienced before, and felt filled with regret. They just hoped that the tyrant would not anger them because of their attitude just now. After all, their lives are all in the hands of this tyrant. If they anger this tyrant, they will probably be killed immediately, let alone their lives. "Your Majesty, although I don't have an aunt named a fairy, I do have a niece who is also a beauty." An elder suddenly had an idea and immediately shouted like a treasure, "And her talent is also very powerful. She will definitely become a fairy sought after by thousands of people in the future. And please think about it, Your Majesty, which one is more attractive, a fairy who has already become famous or a fairy who was raised by you?" As the elder spoke, he winked and his posture was very obscene. Qin Mu touched his chin and nodded slightly. It does sound good." The elder was overjoyed when he heard this and secretly said that he finally won the bet. "Your Majesty is wise." As soon as these words came out, other elders around him also reacted. Yes, I have a daughter who is also as beautiful as a flower." "She is a stunning beauty," another elder quickly agreed. "I have a granddaughter who is also beautiful, gentle, and virtuous." "Your Majesty, I have an ancestor whose charm is still there." This group of people scrambled for it, as if they were afraid of being eliminated if they were too late. But those King Tianguan elders who had no suitable candidates were sweating profusely and running around in circles. Listening to their voices, Qin Mu's eyes were cold and unwavering. The corners of his lips raised slightly, revealing a mocking smile. To be honest, monks like them from great religions often perform worse than ordinary monks when faced with real life and death dilemmas. Because they can easily obtain resources that those low-level monks cannot obtain in their lifetime. Even if they were once monks with a firm Taoist heart, their Taoist heart will be smoothed out during their long and comfortable life of pampering and pampering. As long as they reveal their identities, no one in the 9 human realms will dare to do anything to them. But the lower-level monks can't. They need to pay the price of blood in exchange for a spiritual stone or a few low-level medicinal plants. They simply cannot appreciate the bitter life of the monks at the bottom. Therefore, when faced with a life or death decision, they often choose to survive, even at the risk of violating their Taoist conscience. "Shut up, everyone!" Qin Mu shouted and swept over them coldly. Everyone was silent for a moment, not daring to speak anymore. "Those who were recommended just now will stay for the time being, and kill the rest," Qin Mu ordered lightly, then turned and left. Qin Tian no longer hesitated and immediately took action to kill all those who had been silent just now, and hung their bodies on the gate of Chang'an City. The elders and deacons who survived by chance looked at the bloody corpses and felt very happy in their hearts. Fortunately, they were smart and clever just now. Otherwise they might be the ones dying now. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. At the beginning, I gave the future empress her death. I became stronger because I was stupid. Author, Leng Mian Buletin Leng. Chapter 416. In the Jinluan Hall. Qin Mu sat high on the dragon chair, his legs resting on the imperial desk. He sat lazily, his lazy expression revealing his carelessness, looking like a carefree playboy. After returning to the palace, Qin Mu did not return to the harem immediately, but came to the Xuanhuan hall as a rare sight. I haven't been to court for so many days, and I really miss it. He will be away from the great Qin dynasty for some time, so Qin Mu is also planning to take advantage of today's opportunity to hold a court meeting to arrange the next things. Oh, no, I can't say it's time for a court meeting, because it's almost afternoon. But whether it's a morning party or an evening party, it obviously doesn't matter. Qin Mu lay lazily on the dragon chair. Behind him was Zhang Luoshan, who was wearing a white dress, squeezing his shoulders. Next to him were Yao Guang Holy Master Mu Qingzi and Yun Yan'er, who were beating his legs. Li Qingluo, the empress of the Daking dynasty, and Xie Hong'ai, the former empress of the Kangyu dynasty, were not idle either. They stood on either side of Qin Mu, making tea and serving snacks. There are also women such as Shen Yaoxi from the Yao Guang Holy Land, Lu Ningxuang, the subjugated princess of the Qingmu kingdom, Xuanhuan Zhuang from the White Tiger, Nangongyu from the Baidu sect, Fairy Yueshan from the Fenglai Pavilion, etc., all serving in the palace. Your Majesty, please have some tea. Mu Qingzi handed a cup of fragrant and spiritual tea to Qin Mu. Your Majesty, your rice dumplings are here. Xie Hong'ai walked in with a delicate porcelain bowl, with a light blush on her cheeks. The other women were not to be outdone and showed their attentiveness one after another. Your Majesty, I will peel grapes for you to eat. Master, my slave will help you rub your shoulders. Your Majesty, I will give you a leg beating. Your Majesty, try this sweet-scented Osman thus cake. It's the most fragrant, soft, and glutinous. Owner. They each have their own merits, but they are all fairies and beauties with unparalleled grace, especially their different temperaments, which further highlight their uniqueness. All the warblers and warblers surrounded Qin Mu, filling the originally quiet and majestic Xuanhuan hall with a charming atmosphere. Qin Mu narrowed his eyes in enjoyment and hummed in pleasure. The ministers in the audience were kneeling on the ground, their foreheads pressed deeply against the ground, their eyes fixed on the ground, as if they wished they could become invisible. If it had been before, they would have stood up angrily and yelled. Ridiculous, really ridiculous. This is the Xuanhuan Hall. What does your Majesty think of this place? But now they just want to give a thumbs up and praise His Majesty for what he has done. He is indeed the most romantic king in the Qin dynasty and the most wise king in all time. It would be even better if His Majesty could take a fancy to their granddaughter-in-law or something else. However, these ministers also knew that this possibility was not very high. Because the women who can appear beside His Majesty to serve His Majesty at this moment and at this place are all fairies with powerful strength, extremely noble status, and the beauty of a country. I want to ask which one is not the direct descendant of a large sect, and there is even a peerless existence like the Lord of the Holy Land, the Lord of the Holy Land. That's why they are so favored by His Majesty. It is very difficult for someone like their granddaughter-in-law to win His Majesty's attention, unless His Majesty suddenly wants to change his taste. Qin Mu slowly took a sip of the imported tea handed over by Mu Qingzi, glanced at the ministers kneeling on the ground, and suddenly smiled. Don't you have anything to say? Hearing this, all the ministers trembled. Everyone's brains were racing, thinking about what Qin Mu's words meant. Your Majesty is wise and mighty, has blessed all the people, has great talents and strategies, and governs the country well. I and others are not even qualified to rely on your Majesty. I really feel extremely guilty. After all, some ministers reacted quickly and hurriedly complimented him. I still like the way you acted like a fool before. Qin Mu shook his head and said with a faint smile. After hearing Qin Mu's words, the ministers' expression suddenly changed, their hearts twitched hard twice, their faces turned pale, and cold sweat fell down their foreheads. It's over now. Your Majesty is settling an old score. They did not expect that instead of waiting for His Majesty's reward for their merits, they would wait for His Majesty's wife to settle accounts. Suddenly, the entire Xuanhuan hall was silent, and everyone was silent, not knowing how to respond. Your Majesty, I was really short-sighted at the time and did not understand Your Majesty's majesty and strategy, so I mistakenly thought that Your Majesty was a tyrannical and mediocre king. Now I have repented and am willing to work hard for Your Majesty. I will go through fire and water for Your Majesty without hesitation. In the end, some people bit the bullet and began to take a stand, hoping to save their own lives. Yes, Your Majesty, I am stupid and misunderstood Your Majesty. I have committed serious sins. I beg Your Majesty to forgive. Your Majesty, please forgive me. We understand our mistake. Your Majesty, please forgive me. When the other ministers saw that someone was taking the lead, they also begged for mercy. After all, they knew His Majesty's temper very well. He frequently beheaded and exterminated 9 clans, and sent his wife and daughter to the Yeding Palace. It could be said that he was decisive in killing and cruel in his methods, without any mercy at all. And this method is too common in Dechin. So they didn't dare to gamble at all, they just hoped that His Majesty would be lenient and spare their lives. Qin Mu's lips curled up slightly and he said calmly, "No, what you said is absolutely right. I am a foolish king, a tyrannical and mediocre person. How can I be a wise king?" The ministers were startled and couldn't help but froze on the spot, their faces full of surprise and uncertainty. Your Majesty, what does this mean? He actually admitted that he was a fool? No way. Has His Majesty been taken away? Just when everyone was in shock and confusion, Qin Mu slowly walked down from the dragon throne, walked to the court and stopped in front of the ministers. Then he slowly said, "You must maintain your original intention and remember that I am a foolish king. You must scold me when you should scold me. Don't hide it, otherwise I will be very sad." Qin Mu spoke slowly, his voice was extremely sincere, and his expression was very serious. But it made everyone feel chills running down their spines, sweating, and feeling as uncomfortable as if their parents had died. Your Majesty, aren't you crazy? Qin Mu didn't care about everyone's life or death at all. He returned to the dragon chair, stretched out his arms to hug Mu Kingzi, and said to the ministers with a smile, "When you see my stupid look, don't you want to scold me? Come on, scold me. Ministers. At the beginning, I gave the future empress her death. I became stronger because I was stupid." Author, Len Mian Buletin Leng. Chapter 417. How dare they scold His Majesty? This is not asking for death. They really want to live a few more years. The ministers were speechless for a while. They thought His Majesty would punish them, but in the end, they were scolded. What exactly is this operation? Could it be that Your Majesty's excessive indulgence caused his brain to break? Or maybe some strange attribute has been awakened. Your Majesty, spare your life. Your Majesty, the brave ministers were so frightened that they knelt on the ground and begged loudly. Who can believe that His Majesty the Emperor, who has the royal bloodline of the great Qin dynasty, is the noblest man in the world, and is the most noble man in the great Qin dynasty, actually said these strange words to a group of ministers. He also looked like he was instructing, but this scene was so weird and unpredictable that they couldn't get used to it at all. No, your line should be, "You, a foolish king, would do such a thing openly in the Xuanhuan hall. It is simply ridiculous. Come on, give it a try." Qin Mu shook his head, looking encouraging. The ministers looked at each other with strange eyes. He didn't dare to speak or move, he just wanted to know what happened to His Majesty. Even Qin Tian, who stood aside silently, looked confused and didn't understand what his grandson wanted to do. But no matter what he does, he will support it unconditionally. Qin Tian is very clear about his current position. He is only responsible for protecting Qin Mu's safety and the stability of Dechin. I don't care about the rest, let Qin Mu handle it all. Your Majesty, what's going on? In the end, it was the national preceptor Du Yulin who asked bravely. He thought he had finally figured out His Majesty's tactics, but he didn't expect that he was still too naive. His Majesty is still the same as before. People can never figure it out, and they can never guess what His Majesty is thinking. There must be a reason for His Majesty to do this, and he must find out. I'm fine, I just miss the way you were before. Qin Mu gently stroked Mu King's soft and slender waist and sighed softly. In the past, many ministers must have rebuked his foolish behavior now, saying that he should not be obsessed with beauty, playing with power, saying that he was debauched and immoral, regardless of the safety of the country, and even said that he was the most foolish king in the history of the Qin dynasty and ruined the Qin dynasty. The future of. But now no one stands up and speaks, no one even questions. This made Qin Mu quite bored. If these ministers don't openly clamor, he will have no legitimate reason to ransack their homes and seize their women. This will make his life lose a lot of fun. Of course, Qin Mu could raid his home even without any so-called legitimate reasons. But since these people were loyal to Qin, there was no need for him to play with them for his own pleasure. In the future, when Qin's territory becomes larger and larger, these people will be needed to operate it. He alone cannot support such a large dynasty. Forget it, we'll talk about calling me a fool later. I came to you today to inform you of something. Qin Mu let go of Mu Kingzi in his arms and said lightly. The ministers immediately breathed a sigh of relief. His Majesty finally stopped tormenting them. But then he became nervous again. What does your Majesty want to say, good news or bad news? I'm afraid it has something to do with the crimes they committed before. Your Majesty is going to deal with them. In an instant, everyone became uneasy, waiting for Qin Mu to make an announcement. Qin Mu sat back on the dragon chair and looked at the ministers for a long time. Now, after he had cleaned up these ministers in the court for several rounds, not many of them still harbored dissatisfaction. In addition, the state councillor Du Yulin and the Supreme Emperor Qin Tian are in Chang'an. Even if he is not here, there will be no problems in the operation of Qin. In fact, the basic operation of Qin does not need him in the first place. It is usually decided by the national preceptor and a group of ministers themselves. As a qualified Hunjun, Qin Mu had never interfered in any government affairs. He was too lazy to ask about those complicated and trivial matters. Just thinking about them gave him a headache. Qin Mu can't even name all the counties in Qin, and now that Qin's territory has expanded, he can't remember them even more. In Xie Hongai's words, Qin Mu only plays the role of the protector of Great Qin, and there is no need for him to do anything else. Qin Mu glanced downwards, and the ministers were as silent as a cicada, even holding their breath, quietly listening to Qin Mu's admonishment. After a moment, he slowly said, I want to leave Qin for a while. Leave? Where is your Majesty going? An official couldn't help but ask. The other ministers also looked at Qin Mu. Qin Mu looked far away and said calmly, Go to Xuanhuan domain. As soon as these words came out, the whole court was shocked, and all the ministers exchanged looks with horror. Xuanhuan territory is too far away from Tianlan territory, spanning tens of thousands of miles. Even taking the teleportation formation will take a long time. Moreover, there are many powerful people gathered in Xuanhuan domain, major forces are entrenched, and there are many dangers. Such a long journey is really dangerous. If you make a slight mistake, you may die and be buried in a different place. The most important thing is that if His Majesty leaves Qin, then the safety of Qin will be in danger. The ministers' thoughts suddenly changed and they were secretly worried. They didn't know about the so-called centennial celebration, and Xuanhuan domain had never invited the forces of Tianlan domain in previous years, so Qin Mu chose to leave at this time, and they would inevitably think too much. After all, Dakin had just expanded, and there were still many sects and forces in Tiankai domain that might have disloyalty, and there were countless follow-up tasks to be dealt with. If your majesty left at this time, what would Dakin do if he ran into trouble? With their strength, many things were difficult to handle. If something went wrong, they couldn't afford it. Thinking of this, the faces of the ministers all sank, and there was a hint of disapproval between their brows. Your Majesty, think twice. A minister couldn't help but kneel to the ground. Your Majesty, now that Dakin has just completed the expansion of its territory and is at its peak, you should not leave. A minister also knelt down and advised bitterly. Your Majesty, our great Qin is thriving, you must not leave it. Your Majesty, if you leave, great Qin will be leaderless, and I'm afraid it will be in great trouble. Yes, Your Majesty, you must not. Xuanhuan is a place that our great Qin has never set foot on. It is unfamiliar to you. It is too dangerous for you to go there alone. Your Majesty, everyone knelt down and begged Qin Mu not to take risks. Seeing the fierce reaction of the ministers, Qin Mu raised his eyebrows, looked at the ministers kneeling below with a smile, and asked, if I have to go, are you going to call me a tyrant? Hearing this, the ministers were speechless and couldn't answer a word. How come we are going around and back to this matter again? Your Majesty, how much do you want to be called a tyrant? Fortunately, there are still people who know about the centennial celebration. Qin Tian, who has been guarding Qin Mu, asked. Muir, are you going to attend the centennial celebration next? At the beginning, I gave the future empress her death. I became stronger because I was stupid. Author, Leng Mi and Buletin Leng. Chapter 418. Well, I'm going to Daoxuan realm. How can such a grand festival as the centenary celebration be without the participation of our great Qin dynasty? Qin Mu nodded, looked outside the palace, and said calmly, I want everyone in the world to know who the emperor of Qin is, so that everyone can respect the majesty of the Qin dynasty. Although his tone was very calm, it had a shocking meaning. When the ministers in the main hall heard this, their hearts trembled violently, their faces were stiff, and their heads were pounding. It turns out that His Majesty's ideas are so grand. Compared with His Majesty, they are like frogs at the bottom of a well, no, toads at the bottom of a well. Qin Tian took a deep breath to suppress the fluctuations in his heart, his eyes were slightly moist, and he said with a look of relief, you are worthy of being a descendant of my Qin family. He has two wishes in his life. The first wish is to step into the imperial realm. Now that he has successfully taken one step, he is not far away from the next step. And the second wish is to see Great Qin prosper and make Great Qin the top dynasty of the entire human race, respected by countless people, and even become the co-lord of the human race. And this wish is being realized step by Qin Mu. I believe that it won't be long before the Great Qin dynasty will be famous in the 9 human regions, and even in the entire 42 regions. Muir, the journey is long this time. Remember to be careful. If there are any difficulties or inconveniences, don't show off, Qin Tian warned. Although he knew that Qin Mu's strength was unfathomable and might even be stronger than him. However, the Daoxuan domain is the top domain of the human race, rich in resources, treasures everywhere, including many extremely powerful people, and various dangerous and forbidden areas. Even a true emperor would not dare to look down upon him when he came to the Daoxuan domain, because the water here is too deep. Moreover, Qin Mu's knowledge of the Daoxuan domain was limited to the ancient books he had read, and he did not understand the true situation of the Daoxuan domain at all. It would be terrible if Qin Mu really encountered an accident. Don't worry, ancestor, I know it well. Qin Mu nodded slightly, and the corners of his mouth curved. With his current strength, as long as he doesn't encounter the so-called immortal, he is basically invincible. Even if he encounters an immortal, he can still be sure of self-protection. This trip to Deoxuan realm will definitely be very exciting. Seeing that Qin Mu was so confident, Qin Tian felt relieved and said, "That's good, Mu'er, just go and leave the Qin in my hands." Yes, Qin Mu nodded and said, then reached for the storage ring on his waist, handed it to Qin Tian, and said, "Ancestor, this is what I left for you. I wish you congratulations on the success of the retreat." Hearing this, Qin Tian was immediately happy and quickly reached out to take the storage ring. His impatient spiritual thoughts penetrated in to investigate. After a moment, he suddenly raised his head, with fiery sparks bursting out of his eyes, and asked in a slightly hoarse voice, "Mu'er, everything here is for me." Qin Mu nodded. Most of this batch of resources were trophies he had captured. They were of little use to Qin Mu, but they were extremely valuable to Qin Tian, enough to support his breakthrough to the Imperial realm. And there are a few Imperial weapons inside, which are the real killing weapons. Ha 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 ha, okay, great. With these things, even if the Emperor comes in person, they still have to be kept by me. Qin Tian laughed out loud, as excited as a child, and felt extremely happy. Treasures like Imperial weapons are a fatal temptation for any monk. Looking at Qin Mu, Qin Tian felt a lot of emotion in his heart, with a look of relief and love on his face. Qin Mu has brought Great Qin to an unprecedented peak in just a few months, and now he is preparing to leave and go to the Deoxuan domain to compete with the real geniuses of the human race. Such a monster made him more and more satisfied as he looked at it, and he felt like he could wake up from his dreams with a smile. "Mu'er, I am so virtuous and capable to have such an outstanding offspring." Qin Tian sighed with emotion, a muddy tear falling down his face. "Well, they are all worthless things. You don't have to be like this," Ancestor Qin Mu said with some embarrassment when he saw Qin Tian's excited look. Such high praise made him feel a little embarrassed. Qin Tian wiped away his tears, then slapped Qin Mu hard on the shoulder, and said firmly, "Ancestor is waiting for your triumphant return. Mu'er, I believe you will definitely do it." Mu'er. As he spoke, Qin Tian felt his blood begin to boil again, and he felt like his eyes were filled with tears. Qin Mu. He couldn't stand it anymore, it was so numb, and he would have goosebumps all over the place if he stayed any longer. "Ancestor, I will go and prepare first." Qin Mu coughed dryly and hurriedly left. He was afraid that he would spit it out. Then he took Zhang Luoshan, Mu Qingzi and others away without waiting for Qin Tian to answer. Seeing Qin Mu's back disappear from sight, Qin Tian wiped his tears and murmured to himself, "Great Qin has such an emperor, so why worry about being unhappy?" Qin Tian withdrew his gaze, looked at the ministers below, and said, "My beloved, please be free." Hearing this, the civil and military officials stood up, their expressions still solemn. Apparently they were still worried about Qin Mu's safety when he left the Qin. Mu'er's departure this time is not only to promote the prestige of our great Qin kingdom, but also to gain experience, Qin Tian said slowly, looking at the ministers below. "You don't need to worry too much. I will stay in Chang'an next." Here, he paused slightly, glanced at the ministers below, and said indifferently, "If anyone wants to take advantage of the opportunity to cause chaos, don't blame me for being ruthless." The emperor is wise. Hearing Qin Tian's words, the civil and military officials did not dare to hesitate and immediately bowed respectfully. Qin Tian nodded slightly and waved his hand, saying, "Okay, you all leave." "I obey the order," the civil and military officials responded in unison, and then bowed and retreated. After the ministers left, Qin Tian sat alone in a chair in silence for a long time, and then said indifferently, "I hope Mu'er will have a smooth trip to Deoxuan domain this time, and don't encounter too much danger, otherwise." As he said, he narrowed his eyes and shot out a cold light. Inside the sky prison, Qin Mu looked at Li Yuan, who was in tattered clothes and looked embarrassed, and smiled slightly. I will take you back to Xuanhuan right away. You'd better have a fairy aunt, otherwise. Qin Mu didn't continue talking, but he believed that with Li Yuan's cleverness, he would naturally understand the meaning of his words. Sure enough, when he heard Qin Mu's words, Li Yuan immediately knelt on the ground, his face turned pale in an instant, and he said in fear, "Your Majesty, please believe me, what I said is true." Qin Mu let him out, tidied up his messy clothes for him, and patted the dirt on them, and said with a smile, "Don't be so nervous, we are all a family from now on, maybe you will have to call me uncle." Li Yuan. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. At the beginning, I gave the future empress her death. I became stronger because I was stupid. Author, Leng Mi and Buletin Leng. Chapter 419. Apocalypse Domain. Yaoguang Holy Land. There are many peaks, pavilions, and exotic flowers and plants everywhere, just like a fairy palace in the moon. Yu Linglong, dressed in a black dress, sat quietly on the top of the mountain surrounded by clouds and mist, overlooking the entire Yaoguang Holy Land under the dark night and moonlight. At this time, a trace of worry appeared on her beautiful and flawless face. Senior sister Mu Qingzi had left Yaoguang Holy Land for a long time, but there was no news, which made her very worried. She had tried to contact her senior sister, but failed every time. However, she learned another piece of news, that is, the Qin Emperor had not appeared in public for a long time. It is said that he was licentious in the harem every day, indulging in wine and meat, and even ignored the basic operation of the Qin dynasty. I really don't know how this tyrant who only knows how to covet beauty and indulge in licentiousness all day long has such a powerful power. It's really annoying to compare yourself to others. God is so unfair. Alas. Yu Linglong sighed and stroked her chest and said, "Sister, you've suffered so much." Although she had never experienced it, she knew that the suffering that sister had suffered recently must be beyond her imagination. Sister had paid too much for the holy land of Yaoguang. Fortunately, sister's cultivation was unfathomable, otherwise she would have been tortured to death, right? After all, with sister's character, she would rather die than succumb to the tyranny of the Qin emperor. And that emperor was so cruel, perverted, and inhumane. Who knows how he would torture sister? Thinking of this, Yu Linglong's eyes gradually became moist, crystal clear, and tears slid down her beautiful and delicate face, wetting her clothes. She bit her lips tightly, and her pearly teeth bit through her red lips. Sister's life is really too hard. The more she thought about it, the more guilty she felt. She wanted to rush to the tyrant and kill him without leaving a single piece of armor. But reason told her that she must not seek revenge on the tyrant, because with her current strength, she could never be the opponent of the tyrant. She would even be played around by the tyrant. Yu Linglong couldn't bear to think about it anymore. She looked up at the night sky, the moonlight was bright. She closed her eyes slightly, and recalled every bit of her time with her senior sister in her mind, feeling heartbroken. "Senior sister, don't worry, Linglong will protect the Yaoguang Holy Land well." Yu Linglong secretly made up her mind, when Linglong breaks through to the great emperor realm, I will definitely take the dog head from the tyrant's neck and send him to hell. Yu Linglong slowly opened her beautiful eyes, with determination and resoluteness flashing in her eyes. Then, she calmed down and turned to walk towards the Yaoguang Holy Land. Her current task is to improve her strength as soon as possible and strive to break through to the great emperor realm as soon as possible. Only if she successfully breaks through to the realm of the great emperor, will she be qualified enough to seek revenge on the tyrant. At this time, there were ripples in the void, and then a beautiful figure condensed out of thin air and appeared in the air. The person who came was a woman, about 25 or 26 years old, with an oval face, a pink nose, and a charming cherry mouth. She was wearing a light green gauze skirt, showing her graceful figure and skin like snow. A pair of willow eyebrows seemed to be frowned, and her beautiful eyes were as bright as stars. A long black hair was tied behind her head with a ribbon, but the simple decoration could not cover up the amazing appearance. As soon as the woman appeared, it seemed that the light around her dimmed a little. It was Mu Xian, the fourth elder of Yaoguang Holy Land. As soon as she showed her figure, she couldn't wait to say, "Senior sister, it's not good." "What's wrong?" Hearing Mu Xian's words, Yu Linglong was stunned. Mu Xian's tone was urgent, and she seemed very anxious. Could it be? Yu Linglong's heart tightened. "Sister, according to the news, that tyrant killed Master Yanzi of Qingyun Temple," Mu Xian whispered, "and he also imprisoned all the other elders of Qingtian Temple. The scene was very brutal." "What? That tyrant dared to kill Master Yanzi?" Hearing this news, Yu Linglong was shocked. Mu Xian nodded, and said solemnly, "Master Yanzi is the guardian of Qingtian Temple. His status is special, which is equivalent to the face of Qingtian Temple. He was killed by that tyrant. I am afraid Qingtian Temple will not let it go." Hearing this, Yu Linglong's face became even uglier. Qingtian Temple, that is an ancient sect with a history of tens of thousands of years, with a profound foundation. How dare that tyrant? She was not worried about Dakan, but Qingtian Temple would blame Yaoguang Holy Land for this. Qingtian Temple, that is a huge monster. If Qingtian Temple is angry at Yaoguang Holy Land, I am afraid. And her senior sister Mu Qingzi is still in Dakan. Once Qingtian Temple deals with Dakan, wouldn't her senior sister be in danger? What is this tyrant thinking? Why does he have to make enemies everywhere? Is it possible that he wishes that the whole world is Dakan's enemy? Yu Linglong frowned. She suddenly felt an unprecedented pressure. The idea of this tyrant cannot be inferred by common sense. No, it simply cannot be judged by human thinking. His existence is bound to cause chaos in the world. "Senior sister, what should I do now?" Mu Xian asked hurriedly. "Senior sister has done so much and sacrificed so much for the Yaoguang Holy Land. Now that senior sister is in trouble, how can they, the Yaoguang Holy Land, sit idly by? Let's take a look at the situation first. I would like to see what the Hanjun has to rely on, so he dares to slaughter the elders of Qingtian Temple without restraint." Yu Linglong sighed and said helplessly. She was also extremely angry, and her relationship with her senior sister far exceeded that of other people. But she couldn't afford to offend either Qingtian Temple or Daqin, so she could only choose to endure it. "Senior sister is right." Mu Xian also calmed down and said in a deep voice, "The Hanjun must be confident if he dares to attack Qingtian Temple. Senior sister, we should take advantage of Hanjun's unpreparedness and sneak into the palace to rescue senior sister. Don't be reckless." Yu Linglong shook her head and said, "That Hanjun is cunning and vicious, so he must take precautions. If he rushes in, he will not be able to save the senior sister, but will instead implicate the disciples of the Holy Land, and the losses will be even greater." Mu Xian was silent. She knew that what the senior sister said was true. The faint king is full of tricks and the city is very deep. He is not as reckless as he seems on the surface. Since he dared to attack Qingtian Temple, he must have considered various reasons. Now, although senior sister is under the control of Hanjun, she will not be forced to death immediately. All we need to do is delay for some more time, and when Qingtian Temple holds the Qin dynasty accountable, there may be a chance. Xian, send someone to closely monitor the palace. Don't let that faint king find out, so as not to alert the enemy, Yu Linglong ordered. Mu Xian nodded and responded. She looked at Yu Linglong and hesitated to speak. "Xian, just tell me if you have something to say." Yu Linglong noticed something strange about Mu Xian. Mu Xian pursed her pink lips, hesitated, and then said, "Sister, I think you should leave the Yaoguang Holy Land. That faint king has lost his mind now. You are the hope of our Yaoguang Holy Land. You must not fall behind. Otherwise, Yaoguang Holy Land will be completely destroyed. Leave Yaoguang Holy Land. Yu Linglong shook her head and refused. I have lived in Yaoguang Holy Land since I was a child. If I leave Yaoguang Holy Land, where will I go in the future? Leaving Yaoguang Holy Land? There was no way she would leave. If she leaves, who will protect the Shaking Light Holy Land? Who will protect the inheritance of Shaking Light Holy Land? Seeing Yu Linglong's refusal, Mu Xian gritted her silver teeth and said softly, that Han Jun has gone crazy. Sooner or later, he will point his finger at our Yaoguang Holy Land. As she spoke, Mu Xian's pretty face showed deep worry. Yu Linglong smiled, reached out and patted Mu Xian's smooth jade shoulder, about to say something. At this time, a slightly joking voice suddenly sounded in her ears, like a magic sound initiation, which made her whole body numb. It's not a good habit to speak ill of others behind their back. Warm reminder, if you find that clicking the next page will force you to jump to other websites, please use the chapter error or contact us at the bottom to inform us. We will handle it as soon as possible. Thank you for your understanding. At the beginning, I gave the future empress her death. I became stronger because I was stupid. Author, Len Mian Buletin Leng. Chapter 420. This voice is full of magnetism, as if it can bewitch people. Yu Linglong only felt her heartstrings tremble suddenly, and a strong stimulation surged into her mind. This voice is full of an inexplicable magic, which makes people want to get close to each other involuntarily. Senior sister? Senior sister? What's wrong with you? A series of hurried voices sounded in her ears, dispelling this inexplicable feeling. Yu Linglong's will was instantly restored. Her cheeks were flushed, her heartbeat was violent, her breathing was heavy, her beautiful red lips opened and closed, her eyes were wide open, and her pupils were flashing with a blurred color. Looking at Yu Linglong's appearance, Mu Xian was startled, and immediately grabbed Yu Linglong's soft and boneless slender hands and asked, "Senior sister, are you okay?" A hint of doubt flashed in Mu Xian's beautiful eyes. She clearly felt that at this moment, Yu Linglong exuded a certain temptation. And her expression was strange, as if she was drunk, her cheeks were flushed, her eyes were hazy, and there was water in the corners of her eyes. "No. It's okay." Yu Linglong's face was burning hot, her heart was beating violently, and she almost went crazy just now. She waved her hands and tried to calm the restless blood in her body. Just now, her soul seemed to be swallowed by someone, and her body became uncontrollably hot, as if it was ignited, her blood was boiling, and her heart was empty. Yu Linglong knew very well that she almost fell into a certain state just now. Fortunately, she woke up in time, otherwise the consequences would be unimaginable. Who was plotting against me just now, and what the hell was that voice? Yu Linglong was horrified. She still remembered the scene just now. That voice seemed to be able to seduce the soul, and people felt a wave of inexplicable impulses in their hearts. "Did you hear any sound just now?" Yu Linglong thought about it and asked immediately. Mu Xian thought about it carefully, then shook her head slowly and said, "I didn't hear any sound. Did you hear anything, senior sister?" Yu Linglong frowned when she heard this. She knew that someone must have plotted against her just now, and the cultivation was extremely high. With her current cultivation, she had no power to resist. "Senior sister." Mu Xian looked at Yu Linglong's appearance and couldn't help but worry, calling out in a low voice. Yu Linglong looked around vigilantly as if facing a great enemy, and said solemnly, "Xian, be careful, there may be an enemy sneaking in." While speaking, Yu Linglong's spiritual power was secretly running, ready to go. Mu Xian also tensed her delicate little face when she heard this, her beautiful eyebrows slightly frowned, and her face was alert. But, there was no gain at all. Except for the two of them, there was no one else. Am I hallucinating? Yu Linglong bit her red lips lightly, but she did hear a man's voice. Sister, what did you hear just now? Mu Xian couldn't help asking. Yu Linglong shook her head, sighed softly, and said, just now I seemed to hear someone talking to me. Someone is talking to sister, Mu Xian frowned. Sister, are you too tired recently? So you have auditory hallucinations. Yu Linglong shook her head and smiled bitterly, maybe. Mu Xian clenched her palms and comforted her, sister, don't worry too much. Our Yaoguang Holy Land is a holy land after all. Those villains dare not mess around even if they are brave. Yu Linglong looked up at Mu Xian, stroked her forehead, and murmured softly, but there was really a sound just now. As she said that, Yu Linglong stood up, looked at the dark night sky, and pondered. Suddenly. At this moment, the originally quiet four fields suddenly heard a crisp sound of bow, followed by several footsteps. Who? The faces of the two changed drastically. Yu Linglong stared at one place and shouted sternly, Who? Come out. As soon as the words fell, a figure appeared in their sight out of thin air. This was a woman in purple clothes, with a delicate face and perfect features, like a fairy walking out of a painting. There was a slight arc at the corner of her mouth, but it gave people the illusion that she was covered with frost and would not melt for thousands of years. At this moment, she was looking at them with a smile, and the narrow and deep phoenix eyes were shining with a smile. Senior sister, Yu Linglong and Mu Xian exclaimed almost at the same time, and their beautiful faces were full of astonishment. Why, don't you want to see me? Mu Qingze smiled sweetly, opened her cherry lips lightly, and her tone was soft and gentle, like the sound of nature. Seeing Mu Qingze, Yu Linglong was stunned for a long time before she came back to her senses from the shock and said in surprise. Senior sister, you escaped from Dakin. Mu Xian also widened her eyes, with an incredible look on her face, and said in surprise, Senior sister, you are finally back. Mu Qingze shook her head slightly, smiled, but said nothing. Looking at this scene, and thinking of the strange voice just now, Yu Linglong's heart skipped a beat, and suddenly she had an ominous premonition. She stared at Mu Qingze with burning eyes, and tentatively said, Senior sister, are you the only one who came back? Mu Xian's pretty face turned pale when she heard this, and she looked at Mu Qingze in disbelief. Mu Qingze showed a faint smile on her peerless face, and said, Of course not. As soon as the words fell, a figure walked out from behind Mu Qingze. The figure was dressed in a black robe, with his hands behind his back, and his whole body was filled with an ethereal and otherworldly temperament. He had a playful smile on his handsome face, and his deep eyes swept over the two of them. There was no power fluctuation on his body, but he gave people an unfathomable dangerous aura. As soon as the figure appeared, the whole air froze instantly. Yu Linglong's pupils suddenly shrank to the size of a needle tip, and the hair on her body stood up. Mu Xian's face became even paler, her delicate body couldn't stop trembling, and her pearly teeth bit her pink lips tightly. Because, the person standing behind Mu Qingze was no one else. It was the Qin Mu, the tyrant emperor of the great Qin in their mouths. However, what shocked them even more was the next scene. They saw their senior sister, the Holy Lord of Yaoguang Holy Land, Mu Qingze, slowly kneeling down, like the most pious servant, and respectfully said in the most gentle voice, Master,